What's up, guys? Today my boy Bones and I are going to be talking about building big legs. So past videos we talked about building your hamstrings and also your glutes. So now we're going to move to the front of the legs and we're going to talk about building the quads. Now, like the name implies, quads means there's 4 muscles in the quads. So let's talk about those 4 real quick. Now, 3 of the 4 muscles are monoarticulate. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they just cross one joint, and that's going to be your knee joint. So that's going to be your vastus medialis, and that's the one that you're going to see on the inside of your thigh. And you're also going to notice that because that gives you that cool teardrop shape on the inside part of your quad. Then on the opposite side, you've got your vastus lateralis. Then the third monoarticulate muscle lies underneath, and that is your vastus intermedius. But when you flex the muscle, that's not one that you're actually going to see because, like I said, that lies underneath. And what that lies underneath is the rectus femoris. So that's going to be the 4th muscle in your quadriceps. Now, the difference with the rectus femoris is it's polyarticulate. So instead of crossing only the knee joint, that's going to originate up here on the front of your pelvis. So besides helping just with extension at the knee, bringing your legs forward like you would in a leg extension, that's also going to help with hip flexion. So what that means is bringing your femur up to the front. So that's the difference between the 4 muscles of the quadriceps. Again, 3 of them are monoarticulate, and those only work at the knee joint for extension. The 4th one, the rectus femoris, is polyarticulate, crossing both the hip joint and the knee joint. So now that we understand the basic anatomy, let's talk about some exercises to target the quads. So let's first go over and let's look at a leg extension. Now, with all the exercises that we're doing today, leg extensions are the only one that is a quad isolation exercise, and that's because we're only working the knee joint. There's no hip involved here. So that means it's a great isolation exercise just for your quads. Now, the downside to doing leg extensions is they can be hard on your knees. And the reason is the way your body was designed was to have your hamstrings and your quads work in concert. And now the tendons of your hamstring and quads support the knee from the back and the front. So when you're doing an isolation exercise like leg extensions, you're only working the quads, not the hamstrings. So that means that your knee joint is unsupported from the back. That's one of the dangers of doing leg extensions. It also places a lot of shear stress on your knees. So if you have any kind of ligament problems like an ACL injury, you want to go ahead and probably avoid doing leg extensions. But if your knees are healthy, if done properly, the leg extension can be a great isolation exercise. So one thing that I like to do is make sure that I start my first set a little bit lighter. I go all the way up to 20 reps, and that way it allows me to warm up the muscle, pre-fatigue it a little bit before I jump into a little bit heavier weight. This way the muscle's already tired and I don't have to go as heavy with the weight in order to work the muscles. So what I want to see is a little bit of a pause at the bottom and then a nice squeeze back up with a little pause and back down. So again, the leg extension can be a great isolation exercise if done correctly. So now let's go and let's talk about the squat. Well, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is in their body posture. And what I mean by that is leaning forward as they squat down. So as they come down, they have a tendency to lean forward, and this places a lot of stress on your back and your hips. And then as they press back up, a lot of the movement in the bar is coming from their back. So they're looking in the mirror and they're seeing the bar go up and down, but a lot of that movement, like I said, is coming from their back. So you want to keep your torso nice and upright. To do that, keep your chin up, chest up, and think about putting your weight in your heels and sitting backwards as you squat down, keeping your torso as upright as possible and then pushing back up. You'll hear people ask about foot position. What's the right foot position? Toes out, wide stance, narrow stance, neutral stance. For me, I like to go with a neutral stance, which means a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. My toes turn out just a hair. Now, if I were to go narrower, I can target my quads just a little bit more, but I'm also less stable in that position. If I go really wide with my foot position, then I end up engaging a little bit more of my glutes and my hamstrings. So I like to go with a nice neutral position, feet just a little bit wider than shoulder width, toes turned out. Remember, keep the chin up, chest out, weight in the heels, and sit back. And then press back up. Now remember, a squat is not a quad isolation exercise. This is a compound movement that's involving both the knee joint and the hip joint. So not only are you working the quads, you're working your hamstrings and glutes as well. So these are just some of the small tips to put more emphasis on the quads. So let's walk over to the leg press machine and I'll show you a couple tricks. Now when it comes to a leg press, a lot of it comes down to foot position. If I were to go higher on the platform and wider, I'm going to work more of my hamstrings or engage more of my hamstrings. Now if I were to come lower on the platform and narrower, some people even put their feet together, I'm going to target more of my quads. Now, two other things that you can focus on is the pressure in your feet. If you put more pressure on your toes, you're going to feel it more in your quads. If you put more pressure in your heels, you're going to feel it more in your hamstrings and glutes. So if you're trying to target your quads, you're going to want to go with a narrower stance, you're going to want to go lower on the platform, and you're going to want to push through your toes. So that's one trick on a leg press machine to go ahead and target your quads. So what's the advantage of a hack squat machine? Well, we talked about over there in a squat that if we put our feet narrower together like this, that we can target the quads a little bit more. The downside to that is we don't have the stability, we don't have the balance. But in a machine like this, we don't have to worry about that. So the advantage of a hack squat is we can go ahead and go with a narrower stance, put our weight on our toes, we have our back supported, we're going to come down, press right through the ball of your foot, nice narrow stance. Out of all the lunges, the alternating lunge is my favorite for targeting the quads, and the reason is I get more emphasis with extension at the knee with this than I do with a regular walking lunge. In a walking lunge, as I come down, I'm engaging those hamstrings and those glutes, pressing up, coming forward. What we're gonna do here with an alternating lunge, it's gonna look the same at first. I come down and forward, engaging those hamstrings and glutes, but then I'm engaging the quad as I press backwards, right here, where I'm getting that extension at the knee and exploding backwards. So this is one way to incorporate a lunge into your routine to go ahead and target more of the quads. So that's a well-rounded approach, a whole arsenal of different exercises to target your quads. We've talked about foot position, everything that you need to know to build bigger and stronger quads. So if you guys tune in next week, we're gonna bring it all together, everything we talked about this week, everything we talked about last week and the week before, and that means quads, hamstrings, and glutes. Bring it all together for a total, full leg workout. So tune in next week and we'll go through that routine.